The Curse of Opal's Witchcraft, a terrifying tale of Cesar's descent into darkness. Cesar could feel the chill of the forest even though it was the peak of summer. As he walked through the trees with his flashlight in hand, he couldn't help but wonder what brought him here. He didn't believe in witchcraft or superstitions, yet he couldn't deny the unease creeping up his spine. He was doing this for Opal, his friend from college who was convinced that her family was cursed. Opal's story was eerie. She told him how her great-grandmother was hanged as a witch accused of cursing her ex-husband to an early grave. Since then, there had been a string of tragedies that befell the family: suicides, car crashes, and unexplained illnesses. Opal thought that the only way to break the curse was to find her great-grandmother's spellbook and destroy it. They had been walking for hours, and Cesar was starting to feel the effects of the sleepless night. His mind was playing tricks on him, and every rustle of leaves made him jump. He turned to Opal and said, "Are you sure this is the right path? It feels like we're going around in circles." Opal nodded and said, "Trust me, we're close. This is where my grandmother used to take me to collect herbs for her potions." Cesar wanted to tell her that it all sounded like nonsense, but he didn't want to upset her. They marched on, and after a few minutes, the trees cleared, revealing an old cabin. Opal's eyes widened with amazement as she said, "This is it, Cesar. This is where my great-grandmother used to practice her craft." Cesar shuddered. The cabin looked abandoned and decrepit. The roof was caving in, and vines were slowly taking over the walls. Worst of all, there was an eerie silence that enveloped the forest surrounding the cabin. It sent shivers down his spine. Opal approached the entrance and pulled out a set of keys. She led the way inside, and as he followed her, Cesar couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. It was as if the forest was watching them, waiting to strike the moment they let their guard down. The cabin's interior was dim, and there was an overwhelming smell of musk and decay. Cesar was taken aback, as he expected the cabin to be empty, yet there were things strewn all over the place. There were grimoires, potions, and strange objects he couldn't even begin to imagine their use. It was as if they had stumbled upon a mad scientist's lab. Opal scanned the room, searching for the spellbook. She approached a box, and as she opened it, a roach scurried out, causing her to yelp. "Found it!" she exclaimed, holding up the book. "We did it, Cesar. We finally found it." They both let out a sigh of relief. Cesar thought that they would be headed back to civilization, but Opal had other plans. "Let's stay a little longer, Cesar. We can perform a cleansing ritual and banish the curse once and for all," she said. Cesar tried to dissuade her, but she was adamant. He tried to remind her that they were just college students and knew nothing of witchcraft, but Opal had already lit candles and laid out a circle. The moment she cast the protection spell, the temperature in the room plummeted. The flame on the candles flickered, and Cesar could hear whispers in the wind. He realized that they had made a grave mistake, and before he could say anything, the cabin shook, and the door slammed shut. Cesar felt his heart pounding against his chest. The situation was spiraling out of control. He saw tears streaming down Opal's face as she attempted to finish the ritual. But something was wrong. The circle was failing, and the wind was getting louder by the second. There was a sudden gust of wind, and the candles went out. They both screamed as they felt the room closing in on them. Cesar tried to grab Opal's hand, but she slipped away, and he was left alone in the darkness. He felt something brush against his cheek, and he swatted it away, only to feel something wriggling in his hand. He leaped back in fright as he flicked on his flashlight, only to see a wriggling mass of cockroaches in his hand. Cesar gagged and tried to shake him off. He could hear Opal's screams from beyond the darkness. He braced himself and ran towards her screams. As he entered the room, he saw candles flickering on the ground, and the walls were covered in a pulsing slime. He ran towards Opal, but she was nowhere to be seen. And then he heard a sound that chilled him to the bone. A voice whispered, "You cannot break what is already broken." It was a voice familiar to Cesar. It was Opal's. Or what used to be Opal. He turned towards the source of the voice, and what he saw made him wish he had stayed home that day. Opal's body was twisted and deformed. Her hair had fallen out, and her eyes were pitch-black pits. She levitated above the circle, and the protection spell that Opal had cast was glowing with an unnatural aura. Cesar felt the ground shaking beneath his feet, and he realized that it wasn't just the cabin that was affected. The forest outside was quaking, and he could hear screams all over the place. He took a step back and was about to run towards the door, only to see that it had been barricaded from the outside. He was trapped with the cursed witch. "Opal, what did you do?" he muttered to himself. Opal's body contorted, and she let out a deafening scream, throwing Cesar across the room. He slammed against the wall, and the air was knocked out of him. He watched as the circle began to pulse and glow red. And then it exploded in a burst of energy that rocked the entire forest. The shattering sound was followed by a thunderous silence. Cesar's body was found the next day, curled up in a corner of the cabin. He survived the blast, but he was never the same again. The authorities found strange markings on his body and fragments of grimoires all over the room. Opal was never found, and the forest surrounding the cabin is now avoided. Those who venture there say that they can still hear the cries of the cursed witch, and that the forest is still affected by the deathly hex. Nobody knows what happened that fateful night, and Cesar's mind was never healed enough to recount the events that transpired. But one thing is for sure, the forest still remembers the cut of the cursed witch.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and tell us what you think in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe.